The current mutual defense treaty between the United States and the Philippines contains no provision on automaticity. This means that neither the United States nor the Philippines is obliged to defend each other automatically if an armed attack occurs in their territories and in the Pacific area. This lack of automaticity is a double-edged sword. While it doesn't provide automatic security guarantees, it gives each party some sort of protection from being dragged immediately to the conflict of each other. If during your term as senator, the Mutual Defense Treaty gets renegotiated and therefore needs to be ratified by the Senate, how will you assess whether an automaticity provision would be in the national interests of the Philippines?
Based on how we ended in the last round one, this question will be answered first by Attorney Roque.
Rebus sic stantibus. A fundamental change in circumstances is a ground upon which we can terminate a treaty. Ang aking pananaw po, lipas na po itong Mutual Defense Treaty. Ipinasok po natin ito na ang daigdig ay tinatawag na bipolar, dalawang labanang mga bansa na naglalaban. Hindi na po ganyan ang sitwasyon sa mundo ngayon. Pero ang tanong po, yung lack of automaticity. Yan nga po naging problema sa pagpapatupad ng ating Mutual Defense Treaty. 2 beses na wala tayo ng isla, malinaw na dapat sumaklolo ang Estados Unidos sa atin, hindi po nila ginawa. Kaya nga pong sinasabi ko, kinapanahon na po na pag-aralan muli ang MDT at tignan kung ito talaga ay sang-ayon sa ating pangnasyonal na interes. Dahil ang paningin ko po, nung hindi sila nagbigay ng saklolo, nang nawala ang dalawang isas natin, nawala na po ng saysay ang Mutual Defense Treaty. Iba na po ang panahon ngayon, nung panahon na ipinasok natin yan. Ibang-iba na po ang prioridad, prosperity na po ngayon, hindi na po labanan.
Thank you, Attorney Roque. Attorney Marcoleta.
Kailangan po reviewin na natin ang Mutual Defense Treaty sapagkat ito'y matandang batas na po. Tama po yung rebus sic stantibus. Sapagkat sangayon po sa kanyang Article 2, sinasabi roon na kinakailangan ang dalawang bansa ay magtulungan upang magkaroon tayo ng capacity bawat isa to resist armed attack in the Pacific. Unang-una, hindi naman kailangan magkaroon ng armed attack. Yung threat lamang po ay importante na na kailangan magtulungan. Pero 70 years ago, nakaraan na po yan. Pero hanggang ngayon, hindi pa natin nararating yung capacity to resist armed attack sapagkat wala namang ganung pagtulong ang ginawa ng Estados Unidos para sa atin. Bagamat ito ay obligasyon niya sapagkat sinasabi ay pwede tayong magtulungan jointly. Pagkatapos ay sinasabi nga na kailangan palaging nag-uusap yung dalawa para sa ganun kung ang bawat isa ay malaman niya na ang kanyang international integrity o national interest ay napapariwara na kailangan magtulungan. Hindi po nakikita natin ngayon ang kondisyon na yan.
Thank you, Attorney Marcoleta. Attorney Gadon.
70 years ago pa yung 1952 Mutual Defense Treaty na yan. Marami nang nagbago. In fact, sa kapasidad lang ng pagtulong sa atin ng Estados Unidos ay nabawasan na rin dahil wala na yung kanilang mga military bases dito. So kung ang inaasahan natin ay pagtanggol tayo ng US, hindi mangyayari yan. Yung leksyon na lang sa Ukraine, puro satsat lang ang sinasabi ng US doon. Pero nung nag-atake ng Russia, hindi rin naman sila tumulong. So, kung nagawa nating alisin yung mga military bases dito ng US, alisin na rin natin yung Mutual Defense Treaty sapagkat hindi na nga applicable yun. I believe International Law Professor Harry Roque and Deputy Speaker Dante Marcoleta on those issues.
Thank you. Attorney Marcoleta. Attorney Olarte.
Okay. I believe that the Mutual Defense Treaty should now be abolished, and we should think of other agreements that would benefit our country. Now, the question is, how would you assess if an automaticity is needed? A treaty should be studied well to assess whether an attack on the Philippines would be also considered as an attack on the other country, because if an attack on the Philippines would cause a lot of damage and death to our country, I believe automaticity should apply. So this mutual defense treaty does not provide clearly this automaticity. Thus, it should
Thank
be
you,
abolished
Attorney
in advance.
Olarte. Mr. Albani.
In the name of God, the most compassionate and the most merciful, sabi ng mga matatalinong abogado, ang Mutual Defense Treaty, obsolete na yan. But we must repudiate arbitral ruling as well as the treaty in agreement with the other nation. As long as na hindi coincide dito sa what they call that, the national security. Because now we are facing problem in our region. Pangalawa, nakikita natin dito, we have to modernize also all armed forces of the Philippines. We have to urge funding sa mga sandatahan lakas natin tulad ng police, military, army, para magkaroon tayo ng tinatawag na safety net of our community in the younger future generation to come. Because otherwise, we have to do a win-win solution for the highest interest of our country, hindi sa interest ng mga ibang bansa. Maraming salamat.
Thank you. Attorney Espiritu.
I agree na yung alliance natin sa our partnership natin with the United States has resulted in historical injustices committed upon the Filipino people, especially nung nandito pa yung US bases. And I agree na kailangan na nating umalis doon sa unequal relationship na yan, even yung pag-alis sa Mutual Defense Treaty, sa VFA, sa EDCA. But I don't agree with the pivot to China. I believe that we must develop or pursue our own independent foreign policy in cooperation with our neighbors and in the pursuit of peace. Hindi yung you side with one party and then you escalate conflict with the other party and nadadala tayo sa kanilang mga interest at sa kanilang mga conflict when in fact pwede namang hindi tayo madala doon. And magkaroon tayo ng non-aligned arrangement dito sa Southeast Asia.
Thank you. Attorney Biden.
I think there's a need to review the Mutual Defense Treaty because it was signed several decades ago and there are new developments happening. And with all due respect, I think we also need to take into consideration the findings of the Department of Foreign Affairs because they are the agency in charge of developing our independent foreign policy. But I learned that that this treaty is supposed to help both countries, right? But it seems like when we're trying to procure ammunitions, helicopters or some stuff, because I also became a chair of the Bids and Awards committee in our agency for a certain period of time. I learned that maraming mga conditions. Hindi katulad when you buy, I think in Russia, you can buy 16 helicopters yata, pero sa US, kailangan pa approval ng Senate.
Thank you,
nila.
Attorney Biden. Dr. Balita.
Yeah, we cannot find security from the insecurity of another. And I want to go back to the independent foreign policy with the Filipino in mind. Let's recognize that what happened was where interest of cooperating agency alliance, that's where we were. I would not go for the defense treaty, mutual defense treaty, but rather would like to see it from a multilateral perspective among community of nations and the democracies of the world that I was talking about earlier. And treaties should be looked into what's in it for us, not only on the defense side, but on the other sides, like economic, cultural, educational, and of course, that's in the pursuit of peace and prosperity. And along that line is also the strengthening of our own defense so that we can develop our own security from within. Thank you very much.
Attorney Castriciones.
You know, it's very ideal to say that we just junk the Mutual Defense Treaty, but it cannot be done. We will be creating a void if we will immediately and outrightly junk the Mutual Defense Treaty. We have to put into our minds the fact that we belong to an international community of nations. And of course, sometimes if there are some ambitions by our neighboring country in order to become great, they normally invade other countries as well. For example, the non-aggression pact between Germany and Russia, it was signed between them. But look at what Germany did. It attacked Russia, and thereafter it attacked other countries as well. And definitely that can also happen, more especially now that there is a struggle for supremacy when it comes to first world power. And that's the reason why I think we should, well, probably we can amend. We can renegotiate in order to strengthen the support that must be extended to the Philippines, but not to totally junk, because by doing so, it's a really a big gamble that we will be entering to if that happens.
Thank you. Attorney Panelo.
Alam po ninyo, kailangan susukatin natin ang anumang tratado na pinapasok natin sa ibang bansa sa pagpapatupad ng mga provision nito. Kung yung provision ay hindi tinutupad, ibig sabihin, yan ay walang saysay. At kailangan na nating i-review, i-evaluate, at hanapin natin ang mga provisiones na magbibigay ng proteksyon sa ating bansa. Territorial integrity, sovereignty, yan po ang palagi nating titingnan. Nakita natin ang Mutual Defense Treaty ay mukhang nagkulang sapagkat marami na ang mga halimbawa na kung kailangan tayong bigyan ng tulong ng Estados Unidos ay hindi naman isinagawa ito. Mukhang sila lamang ang nakikinabang. Kaya siguro kailangan i-repaso natin. Pag yan ay dumating sa panahon na aprubahan o hindi, pag-aralan po natin at hanapin natin ang tama mga provisiones upang mabigyan ng proteksyon ang interes ng ating bansa.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Legarda.
At the time that the Mutual Defense Treaty was entered into, 1951, there was a Cold War. The situation has changed. Our enemy is not each other, but poverty, environmental and ecological security, and we must assess all the aspects of national security. Second, the Senate is not the treaty-making body. As we know, the Senate concurs in the ratification of treaties. In the end, it is only the Chief Executive or the President who can leave a treaty, rescind a treaty, and this would have to be, of course, concurred in later on by the Philippine Senate. So it is worth looking into the Mutual Defense Treaty, which has been there for many decades, and see how it applies to us now. But in the end, what lies most important is our national interest and our sovereignty as a nation.
Thank you to all our candidates.